Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Your Intention Matters, the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us on this one. My name, of course, is still Paul Madot. I'm pretty excited about this episode. Today, I have Dr. Christopher Downing. He is superintendent of the Anaheim Elementary School District, coming to us from, I have to say, beautiful Southern California, right?
Right. You have to.
I have to, right? I mean, otherwise, I'm doing it a total disservice. So listen, Dr. Downing, thanks so much for being here. Do me a favor, say hi to everybody, provide a quick intro, and then we'll jump into your episode.
All right. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Chris Downing. This is my 33rd year in education, and I am the proud superintendent of the Anaheim Elementary School District. We have approximately 15,000 students, and we call ourselves the Amazing AESD because of some of the great programs that we have and opportunities for all of our students every single day.
Married, father, both, neither?
Happily married. This year I'll be celebrating my 25th anniversary.
Amazing.
Proud father of two. My oldest daughter attends UC San Diego, and my youngest daughter is a sophomore in high school.
Amazing. And so listen, I what I know about your world is superintendent is the equivalent of like CEO of the district. So here we are, middle of April, closing out the year. I know you're stretched, so I appreciate you being here. And with that said,
thank you.
Let's jump into your journey. So you know that the title of the podcast is called Your Intention Matters.
Right.
And that's really been built on my foundation that nothing is really given to any of us, quite frankly. And most of us aren't even doing what we thought we'd be doing, in terms of our career. And most of us have big decisions to make along the way, meandering paths, and nothing but a straight line and so on. And with that said, I'm ready to go. You ready to jump into your journey?
Ready to jump in.
All right, here we go. So listen, so we go back in time on this podcast. Okay. And so let's go back to the late 80s. Interesting time, 89, UCLA, you're a Bruin. I see here psychology. And so tell me, Chris, when you were graduating, did you have a vision for what you thought you'd be doing? Or were you like most of us kind of having like, well, let me get my degree and then we'll figure it out?
Well, I like to go back a little further than that. Both my parents are educators, lifelong educators, both served within the Los Angeles Unified School District for over 50 years. So growing up, I had a chance to go with my mother sometimes during summer school, and I would tutor some of the students that were in her classroom. And I really enjoyed it, and it was an opportunity to make a difference. So as I was completing, my undergrad work at UCLA, an opportunity arose. The district, Los Angeles Unified School District, was hiring teachers, and I decided to give it a try. I had some experience in terms of being a tutor, so it looked like a great opportunity. I was assigned to a school in South Los Angeles, and immediately upon arriving, just to interact with some of the students that were coming from some severely disadvantaged homes, some real barriers just in terms of, having the necessities to be successful. It really impacted me, and I knew instantly that I had made the right decision.
Your first opportunity as a teacher, as part of your profession, were you elementary school, middle school, were you high school?
Elementary school. I started with second grade. I ended up teaching almost every grade in elementary. Sixth grade, which although it's considered middle school now, at the time, it was elementary. So just an opportunity to teach different grade levels and have a better understanding of the developmental and academic growth of students.
Did you enjoy it right away?
Yes, I did. There's nothing like teaching, an opportunity to change a life just by, sharing knowledge or helping a child understand how to read, which is a life skill that you know is going to impact them for years to come. It brings me joy. And again, coming from a family of educators, I should also note my older brother, one of my older brothers, is actually in education also. Many of my nieces and nephews, my wife is an educator. So uh, it just is an opportunity. It's a calling. I think, I feel like once you get in education, you will know instantly if it's right for you.
It's interesting that you say that because as we were speaking before I hit record, you and I were just getting updated a little bit on each other, and I let you know that my wife and I, we have two kids,
Yes.
and they're now 8 and 6, and so if you were starting in year one, you'd be teaching my daughter because she's in grade two,
Right.
and it's amazing to me. And I want to chat with you about this as we think about your career. But
Sure.
it's funny. She and I, we were talking, and I said to her, I asked her a legitimate question. It turns out she thought I was from Mars with this question, but I said, "Does your teacher write on the blackboard?" And she goes, "What's that?" Like she had no clue,
Mhm.
right? And so
Right.
I can't wait to hear about your journey because I imagine there have been significant shifts and changes to the whole industry from start to finish. And so you mentioned,
Yes.
so you started in elementary school, and it sounds like you had an opportunity to teach multiple different grades
Right.
over your time. Did you have any one favorite grade?
I think sixth grade. I enjoyed sixth grade. Just the challenges. I had a class that was put together with some concerns regarding behavior. It was thought that I could make a difference in the lives of a particular class that I'm thinking of now. And, together we did. We excelled academically, and I saw just tremendous growth from the students. And it was just an opportunity, as I said earlier, to make a difference in their lives. And it's very interesting. Occasionally I bump into students that I had an opportunity to teach, and it's just great when you hear that they appreciate it, the time in
Yeah.
the classroom, the time we spent together, and they have gone on, to make great, accomplishments in their lives, whether it be through having a family or their careers. But they just turned out to be the great people that, when you're a teacher, you always can see that potential in students.
As you were speaking, I was smiling because uh, I have, maybe if I think about my Facebook profile, half a dozen different teachers that I've known over the years. Now I see them as adults, but I remember, like, as a kid, they were just going through some of the moments in those grades. So I'm not the least bit surprised
Yeah.
that with the length of time you've been in education, that you have people still coming back to you saying, "Hey, I remember this," and it's
Right.
got to be so gratifying to hear that that you made such a positive, like, lasting impact on them overall.
Yes,
Yeah.
very rewarding. And just continuing along with the journey, following, classroom teaching. I had an opportunity to become a mentor and help other teachers. And then I got into administration, both at the school site and ultimately in the central office with the Los Angeles Unified School District. My initial venture to the central office, I had an opportunity to coordinate a literacy program, and we were working with over 100 highly impacted schools across Los Angeles Unified School District, and the opportunity to help bring phonics and phonemic awareness and a
Yeah.
love for literature was another great step in my career. Um, you know, uh, this ultimately led to an opportunity for me to lead actually a data branch, and it was an opportunity to help some schools that were struggling better understand some of the causes for the barriers to academic achievement, and to help these schools progress. Um, Following that, I had an opportunity to serve as a principal at an elementary school, and this was just a great opportunity. It was a school of students that really appreciated the opportunity to work with the great teachers that were at the school, and we did our best to be highly engaging and to provide just different activities where students could connect with school. And I think that's so important. When you think about your children,
Yeah.
Paul, just how does the school reach out? How does the school make you feel a part of their learning? I think that is something that really can inspire us to really be involved. Or if we don't get those invitations, if we don't have those opportunities, then we might look at school differently, and that impacts the children. So, as part of education, it's really important. Parent engagement is something that I highly value, and it's something that ultimately I became actually the director for parent engagement for the Los Angeles Unified School District, just because of some of my experiences along the way of working with parents, and having an opportunity to learn from them, as well as provide opportunities for them to be involved. And that was a memorable opportunity. If you can imagine, the second largest school district in the United States, and
Yeah.
having an opportunity to really help shape and improve how parents are engaged, which obviously helps the learning of students. So that was a memorable opportunity that I experienced.
Joe Rogan hosts a podcast that is something like 2 to 3 hours long usually. And I feel like I could just take my podcast cap off right now and just put my parent cap on.
Yeah,
And I think we could record like a 6 hour podcast with you, because as a
easily.
parent, I'm totally dialed in on what you're saying right now.
Yeah.
And so in your 30 plus years in education
hmm
overall, how many years were you actually a teacher?
9 years
So
at a
nine
school
years.
site in a teaching position, and it's been about 23 or yeah, 20. It will be the end of my 24th year, actually, I think, as an administrator coming up.
So 9 years, on the front lines,
Yeah.
right in the room. And so I want to ask you a couple of questions. The first question is, how did your background in psychology benefit you in your various different classrooms over the years? When you think about your first 9 years in education.
I would say my background in psychology helped me understand the development of children, what to expect based on their age. And I feel just helping me be empathetic to some of the barriers that I saw in students, some of the traumas that were impacting them in their home life or in the community, and be a support for them. So I think my background prepared me well to be an educator. And immediately upon entering the district, I started taking additional classes and coursework to improve my craft as a teacher. That was critical piece.
And so, Dr. Downing, during your 9 year run, so to speak, I imagine, as you're speaking, I'm listening to you, I'm hearing you say it was obviously very rewarding for a number of different reasons. And after that length of time, what was behind, if I heard you correctly, did you say you went into admin next?
Yes.
And if so, what was behind that decision? And was it a long, drawn out, hard decision for you, as I imagine it probably was? Or was it, okay, I've kind of put my time in and I want to do something next with my career?
Well, I was fortunate to have a great principal who encouraged me and was giving me opportunities to, um, do administrative activities and projects. During this time, I did attend Pepperdine, and I sought my administrative credentials. So once I had it, again, my principal at the time, and I want to say hi, Bernie Goldstein, who was very influential in my life, just continued to encourage me and explain to me that although you leave the classroom, you still have an opportunity to change lives. You can, support multiple classrooms and multiple sets of students. And I would say, although the first, part of my career was in the classroom, I'm still a teacher.
Hmm.
In all of my positions that I've held, getting in classrooms, talking to teachers, how can identifying how we can better support their efforts. And I'll always be a teacher. And, again, it's an honor to be so.
Did you make the transition from teaching to administration within the same district at the time?
Yes, I did. My career, I spent the first 29 years in the Los Angeles Unified School District,
Okay.
where I attended as a student. And I've been honored the last 4 years to be the superintendent of the Anaheim Elementary School District.
Fair enough. And so how many years were you on the administration side within the LA Unified District?
Um,
Remember how many
let's
years?
see, I would say approximately 20.
Okay, fair enough. And then you moved over, did you say data? You went to, was it a data branch?
Yeah, data. I've had a number of different great opportunities that have helped shape me. I spent some time in the federal and state programs office. Um, Again, I was the director of parent engagement, and then I was an instructional director where I was responsible for 20 schools historically underserved in the South Los Angeles area, and working with 20 principals who were very committed to making a difference for students. We implemented some programs that really called on high expectations, a focus on literacy and writing, and mathematics, and we were able to make some gains. And then I had an opportunity to become a local district superintendent in the Los Angeles Unified School District. The district is so huge, it's broken into geographic areas. So I was responsible for 147 schools, spanning from South Los Angeles area all the way to San Pedro. And there were just different conditions in different areas and communities that really impacted me and helped me to see the need for equity and access for all students. And, that's one of my mantras. It's something I truly believe in. And having the opportunity to be here in the Anaheim Elementary School District, it's something I've worked with our Board of Education and our stakeholders. We have different opportunities that are now present in every single school. So whatever school you attend in this district, you have an opportunity to participate in a dual language program. Whatever school you attend, you have an opportunity to learn how to play 5 to 6 different instruments. We have STEAM focus. So, it's very important to me, and I think it should be for all educators that what's good enough for one student is good enough for another. And it's our job to make sure that every student that walks through our door has the same opportunity to experience high quality instruction, no matter
You
where
know,
they are, no matter where they come from.
I can hear the passion in your voice, and I imagine that operating in a public system, you're limited with reach and budget and dollars, and you try and do without and manage as best you can. And I want to ask you a question. When I usually host this podcast, it's very common for me to have sales professionals on. And I'll see a progression in their career where they'll start off as a salesperson, move into a sales manager, then maybe a director, then maybe a vice president of sales, and so on. And while, pardon me, while it's a little bit different in education, the progression is the same, because I want to talk to you about the decision to move into being a principal. I imagine that you can be a dynamic, amazing, impactful teacher, not necessarily translate very well into being a principal. It's a totally different job, and vice versa. You can be maybe an average teacher, someone who, kind of gets it, but then be a really effective principal. And so I'm curious about this. Number one, is my understanding correct that they're two vastly different jobs, number one, and skill sets? Or number two, what was behind the decision to make the move? Did you kind of raise your hand, or did you get tapped on the shoulder and say, hey, Dr. Downing, we want you move into this next part of your career?
It was a combination. I did have to seek the opportunity to become a principal. I was getting encouragement from, some of my supervisors, people who knew me and appreciated. I think sort of the mindset that I bring to education. Um, you said something that I would like to just clarify. I think you're an effective principal if you continue to understand what teachers are experiencing every day. You have to continue to be a teacher. You have to understand how the decisions you make impact
Right.
instruction in the classroom. And if you don't do that, I don't think you will be an effective principal or an administrator. So when I said I'm still a teacher, whether you're a superintendent or not, if you lose that mindset, if you fail to understand what our teachers are going through every single day, and you know just as we're coming hopefully out of this pandemic, I think that sort of philosophy was very important to just understand how many hours teachers were putting in.
Yeah.
There's this myth or this wholesale approach to say, well, we were in distance learning. It was, it wasn't really school, and it was quite the opposite. Our teachers were working as hard as ever, putting in more hours than ever just to engage with students virtually. It took a whole different preparation level. It took an immediate shift, and I'm so proud of the education world for being able to do that.
I remember as we closed out, or I should say, when we closed out 2021, like this, the school year starts in September of 2020, closes out into, at least up here in Canada, in June of
Yeah.
2021. And my son was in kindergarten and my daughter was in grade one, and my daughter was in French immersion.
Mhm.
So half English, all French, and trying to learn that language up here in
Right.
Canada. And I remember saying to both their teachers that teachers should be paid like $800 million a year because I've never had such an appreciation for, I've always respected the job. I always have. I've been through it, obviously a student for a long time, but
Right.
I've never been a teacher of kids. And to go through what they went through during the pandemic, virtual Google Meets and so on, it's like, and my kids were in grade one in kindergarten, and it was like controlled chaos trying to get these kids to, and I would hear some of the teachers in their classes, and I think that is just amazing that what they can do, because everybody is used to being in the room.
Right.
That's how you teach, right? That's all we know. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like, well, how do you do this and do it effectively? And so I have much respect for yourself and everybody who had to manage that company. And I want to talk to you about that.
Sure.
But I'm curious about when you first started as a principal. First of all, how many years were you a principal?
3.
3 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Was the transition harder for you than you thought, or was it a pretty easy one for you?
No, it wasn't harder than I thought. I uh, prepared for it, and I embraced a philosophy just to work with the stakeholders of the school. It's one that I still embrace. I'm a collaborative leader, I would say, if you had to put a title to it. You have to have ongoing conversations with your stakeholders to understand the challenges that are there and to come to, a common vision. There's a saying I like to say: if you're the only one with a vision, it might be an hallucination. So you have to,
Great
it
line.
has to be a shared vision of your stakeholders as you move any organization forward, whether it's a school, whether it's a district. So the transition wasn't difficult, and I really enjoyed it. Just being there, interacting with students, doing lunch duty. Being there in the morning, greeting parents. So no, it wasn't a difficult transition at all.
Let's talk about another transition. 29 years with one district,
Yeah.
and now you make the move over to the Anaheim Unified School District, elementary school district. After the better part of 3 decades,
Mhm.
under one firewall,
Yeah.
I have to know, how did you make that decision? And I can't imagine it was an overnight decision for you.
No, it was a difficult decision, but it was just a great opportunity. This district, just the philosophy and the support for students was something that, I was eager to lead. And, when I was honored to be hired in the district, once arriving, I knew it was the right decision for me and for my family. Uh, just the opportunity to be a superintendent in the state of California. There's not many African American superintendents, and opportunities are to be a superintendent in general are scarce.
Mm.
So when one arises, it just seemed like the right thing to do, and I'm very pleased. And not only pleased with the outcomes, but just the opportunity to work with some great people here in Anaheim.
And are you in your fourth year now? Your fourth
Yes,
school year?
yes,
All right. So let's chat about this, because we've been talking about COVID, and I don't make light of COVID at all. My wife is a nurse, and so we've had to manage the
yes.
front lines and the mental stress that goes with that, and masking and so on. And I'd love to get your thoughts on, you know, most of your tenure as a superintendent has been in uniquely unique waters, where it hasn't been start in September, start in August, you go to school for 8 hours a day and you go home, homework. It's been very different. And what I'm curious about is the district. Were you ready for a COVID? Or were you guys totally caught by surprise on how to do this, and how did we get one to? I remember having conversations with our schools where they had to realize, well, how did we get, not everybody has internet at home, and how do we get laptops to people and these Chromebooks? And it was just like the schools did such a fantastic job where I live. I felt it was just remarkably solid for what they did. But I'm always fascinated by, like, were they kind of prepared for this? Did they have like a, how do we do this now? Like, what was it like? Were you prepared for any type of disruption in the going to school in school way of doing things?
Well, we were fortunate in that we already had a focus on technology, as a resource and a tool. We had recently purchased additional Chromebooks so that
Okay.
all of our students, we were a one-to-one district. So as the conditions worsened and we were, forced to go to distance learning, the day that our board, voted for us to shift over, um, we were able to send home all of our devices. And then for the next couple of weeks, for those students who might not have been there on that Friday, or students that their device had some issues, we were able to replace them and get our students up and running. Because our district did have this focus on technology, we had different programs where students had experience in using their Chromebooks and accessing sort of our platforms. But it took it took our team working just endless hours, I would say, to start to identify what this next phase of education was going to look like. Just thinking back at the time, no one thought that, when we closed, everyone thought it would be short term.
Right.
Um, but, things continued at the time to worsen. And, we just continued to provide as much training as we could for teachers and for parents on how to help their children access the platforms, for students. And it was just, I think, just a great accomplishment due to the serious conditions that we all faced, to be up and running. And it took us probably, about 2 weeks before we reached a point where every single day, all of our students were able to access their teacher and participate in a full day of instruction. But during that 2 week period, we had activities that helped us build capacity for the day that we rolled out our distance learning program. And, based on feedback from our stakeholders, everyone appreciated the opportunities that were provided, and, that students continue to learn despite the conditions.
Well, I have much respect for what you and your colleagues had to go through, because I went through it just as a parent,
Yes.
and so I'm focused on two kids, and that's all my concern is, of course. And then here, you have your colleagues and people in the front lines, in the room, trying to really be totally vested in maybe 20 to 30 kids per class. And
Right.
it's phenomenal to me how it's worked out, because I would listen to some of the classrooms, and I think, how are they pulling this off? And my daughter is in French immersion, so she's learning a whole new language in grade 1, and she's doing it through Google Classroom. And it was like, how does she even know French now? Like, it's amazing to me. So Dr. Downing, I really appreciate you being here. We've touched on your career, which has been just fascinating to me over the length of time under one industry. I want to talk to you about your decision to go to USC and get your doctorate. And I know colleagues of mine who've gone back to school to get their executive MBA, a 1 or 2 year program, and yet they still maintain their full-time job, and they're married and they have kids, and getting like that type of a degree and designation, that is no picnic. And when you're trying to still provide and work. And so I'm curious about the decision to go back to school, and when was that, and how long was it, and how was it for you when you were doing it at the time?
Um, it was challenging, and the superintendent of Los Angeles Unified School District at the time encouraged myself and two other of the local district superintendents to seek our doctorate, to at least um, give it some thought. um, I attended a couple of events at USC, and I really thought this would be something that would benefit me, just to have exposure to research and other peers in different districts. It was challenging, but at the same time, very rewarding. And I learned so much through the program. I just always want to thank my family for their patience
I
during that
bet.
time, and their support, and just encouragement to just keep fighting uh, through any challenges. And it was truly a rewarding experience, and I'm so glad that I did it.
Dr. Downing, I just have one more question for you. And it's the most serious, important question I have of the entire podcast. Are you a Bruin or are you a Trojan?
I am a combination of the two.
So whoever wins.
Well, um, I love both schools, and I had the best of times at both. So uh, they're both near and dear in my heart, and I don't choose one over the other. So I would say, and that's not a political answer, I
That's
am
a great answer,
equally
though.
a Bruin and a Trojan.
Well, Dr. Downing, listen, I have much respect for what you and your teammates do. I sincerely do. And I so appreciate you taking the time to share your story. Thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And again, to your listeners, I appreciate the preparation that you have and the insight on parents, and what has happened over these last 2 years. And I would encourage anyone who's out there, if you've thought about being an educator, please pursue that. In many areas now, there's a shortage of qualified teachers, and this generation of students needs people who are committed to making a difference. So if you're out there and it's something you've thought about, please pursue it. Education world would benefit from you becoming a part of what we do.
Well said, and thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, everybody, let's wrap this episode up right now. Remember, your intention matters. Why? Because that's the result you'll tend to get. We're out of here. We'll do it again next week. And Dr. Downing, thanks again for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.